Picture this, you're 14, curled up in a basement, the world outside drowned in midnight's grip. The TV hums, casting ghosts on the walls. You're safe, or so you think. Then a sound, sharp, human, wrong, cuts through the dark. It's not the wind. It's not a dream. Someone's in the house and they're coming for you. I was 14, and David, my best friend, was 15. His parents had left town, handing us the keys to their house, a rare gift of freedom for two reckless teens. The den was our fortress, a chaos of empty chip bags, soda cans, and game controllers tangled like vines. We cranked the music, our shouts and laughter bouncing off the walls, loud enough to shake the night. The hours blurred, time slipping through our fingers as we battled pixelated enemies on the screen. By 4 a.m., our energy waned, voices hoarse, bodies heavy. David, always the restless one, suggested a walk to cool off. I shrugged too, tired to argue. We stepped into the neighborhood, the air biting our cheeks, the streets silent under a starless sky. Houses stood like sleeping giants, their windows dark, unseeing. 10 minutes later we were back, the cold clinging to our skin as we descended into the basement's dim glow. David's basement was a world apart, half sunk into the earth, its layout a riddle of shadows. The front yard sloped upwards so the den sat level with the ground, its windows peering out like cautious sentinels. Deeper inside, a second room lurked, a cavern of worn couches, a dusty TV, and air that felt too still, like it was holding its breath. I claimed the couch closest to the basement staircase, its fabric rough under my fingers, cool against my back. David tossed me a blanket, its weight a faint comfort as I burrowed into it. He sprawled on the couch across the room, his form barely a smudge in the TV's pale light. A movie flickered on, its dialogue a distant murmur, lulling me into a haze. Sleep came swiftly, a heavy tide pulling me under, the world fading to black. Then the night turned. My body jolted upright, heart pounding like a trapped animal. David was there, crouched beside me, his hand clamped on my shoulder, his eyes wide with a fear I'd never seen. "Quiet," he breathed, his voice a razor's edge. "Listen." Upstairs. My mind was sluggish, tangled in sleep's grip, but I strained to hear. A faint rustling like fingers rifling through papers drifted from above. Then, two sharp groans, floorboards bending under a weight too heavy to be innocent. My pulse roared, a storm in my veins. "Someone's up there," David whispered, his words a cold blade slicing through my daze. I wanted to dismiss it, to cling to the hope of his cats scampering above. But the air had changed, thick, oppressive, like it was pressing against my chest. Two coughs rang out. They were human, deliberate, and they shattered any illusion of safety. My body screamed, run, hide, fight, but my limbs felt leaden, betraying me. David's face was a portrait of terror, his breath ragged, eyes darting to the staircase. I groped for my phone, my hands trembling, fingers brushing empty air as it eluded me in the dark. David moved first, lunging for the TV, killing its light, plunging us into a near black void. The staircase loomed behind us, a tunnel of darkness, its mouth open and waiting. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, heavy, began their descent. Each one, a hammer striking my skull, counting down our seconds. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Instinct took over, raw and primal. I stumbled off the couch, my bare feet slapping the cold concrete, each step a jolt of adrenaline. David was already. The den door, his hands wrestling the ancient knob, its resistance mocking our panic. The staircase was too close, its shadows stretching toward us like fingers. David yanked the door open and we burst into the night, the air sharp and biting, clawing at our lungs. We sprinted across the street, diving into the neighbor's bushes, thorns tearing at our skin as we crouched low, hearts hammering. My chest burned, each breath a struggle against the weight of fear. David's phone glowed faintly, his fingers fumbling as he dialed 911, his voice a trembling thread as he spilled our story to the dispatcher. I couldn't look away from David's house. The living room window, vast and uncurtained, stared back, like a predator's eye. In the scant moonlight, something stirred, a silhouette impossibly tall, its edges blurring into the dark, as if it were woven from shadows. It moved with a slow, unnatural grace, gliding through the room, its presence a violation of the world I knew. "Look closer," my mind whispered, "but don't let it see you." I told David, my voice barely a breath, and he relayed it to the dispatcher, who promised help was near. But near wasn't now, and the night felt alive, its whispers. Rustling leaves, distant hums, my own ragged breaths, closing in like a noose. Time warped, each moment stretching into forever. The bushes were a fragile shield, their thorns a die, reminder of our vulnerability. What if it knows we're here? The thought looped, a trance pulling me deeper into dread. I imagined it stepping outside, its massive form blotting out the stars. Its eyes, did it have eyes, finding us? Then sirens, sharp, urgent, tore through the silence. 2 squad cars roared into the cul-de-sac, their lights slashing red and blue across the street, painting the world in chaos. We stumbled from the bushes, our voices tripping over each other as we ran to the officers, words tumbling out in a frantic flood. 2 officers stormed the house, their flashlights cutting through the windows like blades. A third scoured the yard, his steps deliberate while the 4th stayed with us, his questions calm but relentless. "Did you see him? How do you know someone's inside? Was anything taken?" We had no answers, only the truth. Something was there, and it wasn't human. Not entirely. A shout pierced the night, raw and commanding. Footsteps thundered from the backyard, crashing through the woods beyond. The officer with us sprinted toward the gate, his radio crackling with urgency. In the distance, a flashlight's beam pinned a figure, a man, massive, his frame a mountain against the trees. He was running, but the light held him, freezing him in place. Metal cuffs gleamed. As they snapped shut, there sounded a final note in the chaos. As they led him to the squad car, I saw him fully. 6'7", 300 pounds. A giant with eyes that burned through the dark, unblinking, unreadable. The officers searched the house, their voices muffled as they swept every corner, every shadow. Nothing was taken. No one else was inside. But the emptiness felt wrong, like the house itself was holding a secret. Why was he there? The question sank into me, a weight I couldn't shake. We didn't sleep that night or the next. Every sound, every flicker of movement sent us pacing, checking locks, peering into the dark. The basement, once our haven, was now a trap, its walls whispering of what we'd escaped. I saw that silhouette in my dreams, its shape burned into my mind, its edges bleeding into the night. Was it just a man, or something more? Years later, the question lingers, a shadow that follows me. Some nights I wake, heart racing, certain. I hear footsteps above, and in the quiet I wonder, what did he want? What was he looking for? The answer, I fear, is still out there, waiting in the dark. I was 18, a slight girl drifting through my town's quiet streets at 9 p.m., music pulsing softly in my ears. The air carried a gentle chill, wrapping me in a false sense of peace, as if the world could never harm me. My small town was a haven, where doors stayed unlocked and smiles were currency. But safety is a lie the night loves to tell. A sudden dryness gripped my throat, sharp and insistent. A corner store, its sign glowing faintly, beckoned just blocks away. I hurried toward it, each step echoing with a rhythm I didn't yet know, was leading me to terror. The store loomed, its windows dark as forgotten promises. Why were they shut? It was barely 9 p.m., far from its usual midnight close. My breath caught, the silence pressing against my chest. I called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" My voice wavered, swallowed by the night. No answer. I tried again, louder, but the void stared back. The air turned thick, like it was hiding something. My shadow stretched under the lone streetlight, twisting as if trying to warn me. I turned to leave, each step heavier, the darkness clinging to my skin. Then a sound, like a secret the night couldn't keep, broke the stillness. The door eased open and a weak porch light sputtered, casting jagged shadows across the pavement. A man stood in the doorway, his form half swallowed by darkness, his edges sharp as a blade. My heart surged. Water, at last. I stepped closer, but his eyes pinned me like a moth to a board. They glowed with a feral, untamed hunger, burning through the dimness. In his hand, a knife gleamed, its blade a sliver of moonlight, sharp enough to cut through hope. My stomach churned, a storm, a fear rising. "Just busy in the kitchen," he muttered, his voice rough like gravel underfoot. The words felt wrong, a story spun to hide something darker. I backed away, my eyes glued to the knife, its edge whispering promises of pain. Every instinct screamed to run, but my legs felt rooted, caught in a dream where the world tilted toward nightmare. I forced a smile, my voice barely a breath. "I just need water." His gaze never wavered, those eyes stripping away my courage layer by layer. What was he hiding? The air grew colder, the night tightening around me like a noose. My hand shook as I extended the money, my eyes never leaving the knife. His smile was a crack in reality, too wide, too hollow. He took the bills, his fingers brushing mine, cold as the blade he held. He disappeared into the store, the darkness swallowing him whole. I stood frozen, the night pressing in, each second stretching into eternity. He returned, the knife still clutched, the water bottle dangling like a lure. "Take it and run," my mind screamed. I grabbed the bottle, my fingers trembling, and muttered a thank you that tasted like ash. I turned, walking fast, then faster, my music cranked loud to bury the fear. The street stretched endlessly, the lights dimming as if the night itself was conspiring. Was he watching? Each step felt like a gamble, the ground unsteady, the world blurring into a dream where danger waited just out of sight. Something watched me, its gaze a weight on my spine. I spun around. Nothing but shadows, dancing under flickering streetlights. My heart hammered, urging me to move faster. I jogged, the world blurring, the lights streaking like comets in a dying sky. My legs burned, but I pushed on, the bottle heavy in my hand. I stopped, gasping, the air sharp in my lungs. I fumbled with the cap, my earphones slipping. Then, footsteps, rapid, closing in. My blood froze. I turned, and there, 10 feet away, the man's knife flashed, a silver claw in the dark. His eyes, wild and relentless, bored into me. "Run. Now." My legs obeyed, pumping through a tunnel of terror, the world narrowing to the rhythm of my breath. His steps thundered behind, his presence a shadow that swallowed light. I felt his breath, hot and close, his knife a promise of endings. Then, a stumble. His body hit the ground, the night swallowing his pursuit. I didn't look back, running until the world was only my heartbeat. I burst into my house, the door slamming behind me, my lungs raw. I collapsed, the floor cold against my skin, my parents' worried voices a distant hum. I stammered out the night's horrors, the knife, the chase, the eyes that wouldn't let go. They called the police, their faces pale. Days later, the truth unraveled. The man was no man, but a predator. His store, a facade, hid freezers brimming with human organs, harvested from countless victims of his trafficking empire. Each night, I see those eyes burning through my dreams, a reminder of the abyss I escaped and the darkness that lingers in the places we call safe. In the heart of the Nevada desert, where the wind carries echoes of forgotten lives, I stood frozen, staring at the mountains that seemed to breathe under the weight of last night's snow. Their peaks, jagged and veiled in mist, whispered a challenge I couldn't ignore. Something ancient stirred in the silence, pulling me toward a truth I wasn't ready to face. A scorched photograph, its eyes burning through time, waiting to claim me. My small Nevada town is a place where time slows, where the desert stretches like an endless canvas of sand and secrets. I've always found solace in its vastness, tearing through the dunes, on my ATV or hiking with my dogs, Buddy and Snoopy, their paws kicking up dust as they chase shadows. Behind my house, the desert unfurls for miles, unbroken except for two mountains I've named A and B. Mountain A is my sanctuary, its trail familiar under my boots, a path I could walk blindfolded. But Mountain B, with its steep cliffs and jagged rocks, feels alive in a way that unsettles me, as if it guards something it doesn't want shared. The day before this hike, a blizzard had raged, blanketing the desert in a rare, suffocating snow. Winds howled, strong enough to bend trees and bury trails, leaving the town hushed and wary. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving a sky so clear it hurt to look at, the sunlight glinting off the snow like 1,000 tiny blades. My dad, always the voice of caution, warned against hiking. Too risky after that storm, he said, his eyes scanning the horizon. But my aunt, visiting from out of town, was insistent. Mountain B's calling us, she said, her voice bright but edged with something I couldn't place. The sun's hitting it just right. My gut churned, a faint alarm ringing in my chest, but I leashed Buddy and Snoopy, grabbed my pack and followed, Dad trailing reluctantly behind. The desert was transformed, its familiar contours softened by snow, the ground a treacherous mix of mud and ice. Bushes sagged under the weight of frost, their branches glinting like skeletal fingers. Light snowflakes stung my face, melting into rivulets that dripped down my neck. Buddy and Snoopy bounded, ahead, their bark sharp in the stillness, but even they seemed subdued, their ears twitching at sounds I couldn't hear. As we neared Mountain B, I stopped dead. Tire tracks, deep uneven grooves cut through the snowy trail, crusted with ice as if they'd been there through the storm's worst. Who would drive out here? The question hung in the air, unanswered. Dad frowned, his breath visible in the cold, but shrugged it off. Aunt kept walking, her boots crunching too loudly, oblivious to the unease settling over us. The track stretched toward the mountain, a silent invitation that felt more like a warning. The trail up Mountain B was a gauntlet of sharp rocks, now slick with ice, each step a gamble. My boots slipped, my heart pounding as I steadied myself, the cold searing my lungs. Buddy and Snoopy darted between boulders, their noses low, as if tracking something beyond my senses. Dad lagged behind, muttering about the foolishness of this climb, while Aunt pushed forward, her enthusiasm grating against the mountain's oppressive silence. This isn't right, I thought, but the need to reach the top gripped me, a compulsion I couldn't shake. The wind grew sharper, carrying a faint hum like voices just out of reach, urging me onward. When we reached the summit, exhaustion hit hard, my legs trembling as I dropped to my knees. The view was breathtaking, desert sprawling to the horizon, the town a distant cluster of lights. But it felt wrong, like staring into a painting that hid something sinister. The summit was littered with debris, food wrappers, beer bottles, dead bushes tangled in snow as if someone had fled in panic. I pulled out my phone, snapping photos of Buddy and Snoopy against the backdrop, trying to anchor myself in the moment. Then I saw them, my dogs' noses buried in a gnarled, snow-dusted bush, their bodies tense, tails rigid. "Come here," I called, my voice sharp, but they ignored me, their focus absolute. Irritated, I stomped over, ready to yank their leashes. That's when I saw it, a scattering of charred fragments in the dirt, some caught in the bush's brittle branches. At first I thought it was trash, bits of cardboard or paper left by careless campers. I knelt, brushing snow from one piece, and my breath caught. An eye. A single piercing eye stared up from a blackened fragment of an old photograph. Its gaze, so sharp it felt alive. My fingers trembled as I held it, the edges crumbling under my touch. I know this eye. The familiarity was a knife in my chest, cutting through years of buried memories. Dad and Aunt joined me, their faces tight with confusion. "What is that?" Aunt asked, her voice barely a whisper. I didn't answer, my hands already searching for more pieces, driven by a need I couldn't name. Each fragment I found, a cheek, a jaw, a shred of a suit, felt like unearthing a grave. The wind howled, its voice now distinct, a low moan that seemed to come from the mountain itself. "Keep going," it urged, and I obeyed, my heart racing as I pieced together the puzzle. Snow clung to my gloves, my breath clouding the air, but I couldn't stop. Aunt held the fragments together, her hands shaking, while Dad stood frozen, his eyes darting to the horizon as if expecting something to emerge. When we had enough, we laid them out, the charred edges forming an 18/820 photograph, large and formal, like a relic from another time. I stepped back and the world spun. Grandfather, his face stern and unyielding, stared out from the scorched remains, his eyes locking onto mine with a force that stopped my heart. This was the man whose death had shattered our family. Gunned, down by gang members in California when Mom was a child, a tragedy that drove us to this desolate town. His photo, the exact one, hung in Mom's room, its frame a quiet shrine to a man I'd never met. "This can't be him," I stammered, my voice breaking. Aunt dropped the pieces, her breath hitching, and Dad's face was a mask of dread. "Someone's been in our house," I said, the words spilling out. "They took it, they brought it here." The thought ignited a panic so raw it burned. Those killers, the ones who'd torn our family apart, had found us. This was their message, a taunt, carved in ash and snow. "Run." The command came from somewhere deep inside, and I grabbed the fragments, shoving them into my bag. Buddy and Snoopy whined, their fur bristling as we scrambled down the mountain, the trail now a blur of ice and shadow. The wind roared, its voice no longer a whisper but a scream, carrying the weight of years, of blood, of secrets. "They're coming for you," it seemed to say, and I believed it. My phone was useless, its screen blank, no signal to call Mom, to warn her. Dad and Aunt tried to calm me, their voices distant, drowned by the pounding in my ears. The desert stretched endlessly, its vastness no longer a refuge but a trap, the mountains casting shadows that clawed at our heels. Every gust, every rustle was a pursuer, a phantom closing in. The descent felt like hours, my legs burning, my mind trapped in a loop of terror. What if they're at the house? What if Mom's gone? The photo's eyes haunted me, their gaze etched to my soul, watching from every shadow. When we finally reached home, I burst through the door, my voice raw as I called for Mom. She was there, in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup, her face puzzled by my panic. My brother sat on the couch, lost in a video game, oblivious to the storm in my chest. Relief crashed over me, but it was fleeting. A thin veil over the dread that clung like damp cloth. I spilled the story, my words a frantic torrent as I laid. The fragments on the table, their charred edges stark against the wood. Mom's face drained of color, her fingers hovering over the pieces as if they might bite. "That's Dad," she whispered, her voice trembling with a fear I'd never seen. She led me to her room, where the original photo hung, its frame untouched, its eyes as piercing as ever. "How?" she asked, her question a plea to the universe. We sat in silence, the impossible pressing down like a physical weight. Mom had always believed there was only one copy of that photo, a singular relic of a life cut short. Another, torn and burned, left for us to find, felt like a violation, a tear in the fabric of reality. We locked the house that night, every door, every window, as if bolts could keep out what we'd found. The fragments were hidden in a drawer, but their presence lingered, a silent accusation. "They've found us," I said, my mind spiraling to the gang, the violence, the fear that had chased us across states. Mom shook her head, but her eyes betrayed her, wide with the same terror I felt. Sleep was impossible. The wind outside howling like a chorus of ghosts, each gust a reminder of the mountain, the photo, the eyes that wouldn't let go. Days later, Mom called Grandma, her voice hesitant, afraid of what she'd uncover. Grandma's words, frail over the phone, shattered our assumptions. "I told your uncle to destroy it," she said. She'd felt a presence in her house, tied to that same photograph. "His eyes followed me," she confessed, "no matter where I stood. I couldn't breathe with it near. She'd begged my uncle to take it far away, to burn it, to free her from its gaze. He'd driven to Mountain B in the storm, drunk and reckless, and tried to burn the photo, but the wind tore it apart. I scattered it," he later admitted, his voice heavy with shame. "I didn't think you'd find it." The explanation should have been a relief, but it wasn't. Why didn't the pieces scatter? The storm had been a monster, yet the fragments lay close together, untouched by snow, as if anchored to the mountain. Why Mountain B? I'd never have climbed it if Aunt hadn't pushed, a choice that felt less like chance and more like destiny. The photo, or whatever clung to it, had wanted to be found, to stay with us. Those eyes, I saw them now in every shadow, every dream, their gaze a weight I couldn't shake. I remembered Grandma's words, the way she'd described them following her, and I knew I'd felt it too. That first moment I held the fragment, the familiarity that wasn't just memory but something deeper, something alive. I stopped hiking after that. The desert, once my freedom, feels like a cage. Its vastness, hiding watchers I can't see. The mountains loom larger now, their peaks sharp against the sky, as if daring me to return. The fragments are gone, buried in a box we'll never open, but their power lingers. At night, when the wind howls, I hear it, a voice, faint but clear, calling me back to the snow, to the mountain, to the truth I'm too afraid to face. Some things don't let go, I tell myself, and I wonder if they ever will. I was a young single mom, barely holding it together in a modest apartment complex perched at the edge of a quiet northeastern town. My toddler son, with his wide eyes and infectious giggle, was the heartbeat of my world. The reason I dragged myself through endless days at a soul-crushing office job. The town was small, the kind where everyone knew everyone's business, but nothing ever happened. Or so I thought. After my divorce, I'd carved out a fragile routine: work, daycare, dinner, bedtime stories. The apartment was our sanctuary. 2 floors of worn comfort, a kitchen smelling of coffee, a living room with a sagging couch, and upstairs a tiny bedroom where my son dreamed under a star-shaped nightlight. But beneath the routine, I carried a quiet fear, the kind that lingers when you're alone, responsible for a life so small and vulnerable. One morning, I walked into work, the air electric with hushed voices. My coworkers were clustered around a desk, their eyes glued to a phone screen. "What's happening?" I asked, expecting some petty local drama. Their words hit like a cold wave. A patient had escaped from the psych ward at the hospital, slipping through security like a ghost. I might have dismissed it. Escapes like that belonged in horror films, not my reality. But one of them thrust the phone toward me. The news article's photo stopped my breath. His face stared back, older, hollower, but unmistakable. I knew him. Not as a friend, not even as someone I'd spoken to, but from high school years ago. Back then he was untouchable, athletic, charming. The kind of guy who walked through life with a crowd trailing behind. His wealthy family a shield against the world. Now, the article painted a different story. Involuntary commitment, a fractured mind, and a disappearance that left the police scrambling. "He's been gone for hours," my coworker said, her voice low. "They don't know what he's capable of." I stood frozen, the photo burning into my mind. His eyes, once bright, now vacant, like windows to a place I didn't want to see. I told them I recognized him, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. "He was normal back then," I said, but the words felt like a lie. "People change, minds break." A coworker, his tone teasing but sharp, leaned in. "They saw him near Creek Road. Isn't that right by your place?" My heart stuttered. Creek Road was a short walk from my apartment, a mile at most from the hospital. I forced a smile, brushing it off. "He wouldn't come near me," I said. But the thought took root, a seed of dread sprouting in the quiet corners of my mind. He didn't know me. He couldn't. But what if he did? The next few days were a blur of routine. Diapers, spreadsheets, microwave dinners. But the news clung to me like damp air. At work, the whispers grew darker. My coworkers filled me in. The guy had broken into a house, someone he barely knew, and hidden in their attic for days, living like a shadow among their belongings. He'd slipped out before the police arrived, leaving only traces. A moved chair, a faint smell of sweat. I sat at my desk, my hands trembling as I typed his name into the search bar. The articles confirmed it, but one detail made my blood run. The house was 2 streets from my apartment, so close I could see its roof from my kitchen window. I told my coworkers, my voice barely a whisper, the words heavy on my tongue. One of them laughed, his eyes glinting with mischief. "Imagine if he's in your apartment right now, hiding in your closet." The room spun. It was a joke, absurd, impossible. He didn't know where I lived, he didn't remember me. But the idea burrowed deep, its roots twisting through my thoughts. What if he's watching? That night I moved through our routine like a ghost. I cooked dinner, my son's laughter a fleeting warmth against the chill in my bones. I bathed him, his tiny hands splashing water, and tucked him into his crib, his nightlight casting soft stars on the ceiling. Downstairs I collapsed onto the couch, the TV's murmur my only company. Our apartment felt both familiar and foreign, its 2 floors a fragile bubble against the world. The living room sat at the back, its glass doors opening to a grassy strip shared by the complex, a silent, empty space no one ever crossed. Long, sheer curtains draped the glass, their gauzy fabric a weak defense against the night. I'd always hated how they glowed at night, turning the room into a stage for anyone outside. but I told myself I was safe. We were safe. Then, the world shifted. A dull sound, like a heavy footfall, broke the quiet. I froze, my eyes darting to the ceiling, my breath shallow. Just a neighbor, I told myself, maybe a door closing too hard. I turned up the TV, the sitcom's laughter jarring against the tension in my chest. Minutes later, another sound. Sharper, closer, like something brushing against the walls. My heart kicked against my ribs, a frantic rhythm. I was paranoid, always had been, jumping at shadows since becoming a mom. But this felt different, like the air itself was watching. My co-worker's words looped in my mind, a relentless chant. What if he's in your place? I shook my head, forcing myself up the stairs to check on my son. The apartment was still, the air thick, as if it held a secret. In his room, he slept soundly, his blanket slightly askew, his face peaceful under the starlight. I adjusted them, my hands trembling, and whispered to myself that I was imagining things. Too many late nights, too many fears. I headed downstairs, sinking into the couch, willing my pulse to slow. That's when I saw it. A shadow, long and deliberate, glided across the living room, its form stark against the sheer curtains. My breath caught, my body rooted to the couch, every nerve screaming. The glass doors loomed, their surface a mirror to the night beyond. The shadow moved again, slow, purposeful, tracing the edge of the grassy strip outside. My mind scrambled for reason. Maybe a maintenance worker, a late-night wanderer. But the complex had a no-pets rule, and in a year here, I'd never seen a soul out there at night. The shadow passed again, its pace unhurried, as if it knew, was watching. Look away, my mind begged, but you can't. My heart pounded, a drumbeat drowning out the TV's drone. I gripped the blanket, my knuckles white, my thoughts spiraling. Was it him? The boy from high school, now a stranger with a broken mind, standing outside my home? The shadow stopped, its form towering just outside the glass. Time slowed, the world narrowing to that single, unbearable moment. The curtain swayed faintly as if stirred by a breath I couldn't hear. My lungs burned, my breath trapped in my chest. I was frozen, a prey animal caught in a predator's gaze. My coworker's voice echoed, a trance pulling me deeper. What? If he's here for you. Then a faint movement. The door handle twitched, a deliberate test of the lock. My vision blurred, my mind flooding with images. His face from the article, those hollow eyes, now inches from my sanctuary. If he could escape a hospital, he could shatter glass. He could be here now for reasons I'd never understand. My son's cry, sharp, piercing, cut through the silence. The handle stilled. The shadow vanished, melting into the night like a nightmare dispelled by dawn. I stumbled to the glass, my legs unsteady, and tore the curtains aside. The grassy strip was empty, the darkness absolute, swallowing any trace of what I'd seen. My breath fogged the glass, my hands shaking as I searched for movement, for proof I wasn't unraveling. Nothing. I locked the doors, my fingers fumbling, and ran upstairs to my son. He was fine, fussing in his crib, his cries a lifeline pulling me back from the edge. I held him close, his warmth grounding me, but the fear clung like damp cloth seeping into my bones. Who was outside? Was it him, the boy I'd known, now a specter from a past I'd buried? Or was it something else, something the night itself had conjured? I never found answers. The next day I added a deadbolt to the glass doors, replaced the sheer curtains with thick, opaque ones that blocked the world. I spent weeks jumping at every sound, every flicker of light, my son's laughter the only thing keeping me sane. Eventually, I left that apartment, that town, that job, chasing a fresh start where the shadows couldn't follow. The news said, The patient was caught 2 hours away, locked back in the hospital under constant watch. I don't know where he is now. But some nights, when the dark presses close, I feel that shadow again, its presence a whisper just beyond the glass. I know, you're there. And in those moments I wonder if it was ever him, or if something else found me that night, something that never left. Some houses hold secrets that cling to your skin. At 9, I was a boy of endless questions, living in a home that felt too vast for my family. Mom, Dad, and G, my 2-year-old brother, whose small hands fumbled with the world. Dad was away, that year, his work pulling him across the sea, leaving Mom, G, and me to fill the house's hollow quiet. Mom's fear of the dark was a silent guest, so we'd crowd into her bedroom each night. The TV's glow our only guard against the shadows. Her unease was a warning we didn't heed. That night at 9 p.m., we planned a movie. A rare joy when stories came on air, not screens. The bed was our haven, its covers smooth, G nestled at its heart, his breaths a soft rhythm. The room smelled of clean linen, the TV's hum a gentle pulse, its light weaving blue across the walls. But the house was watching, its breath slow and heavy. Mom and I, caught in the warmth of our ritual, realized we'd forgotten our movies, Soul, chips and Doritos, their crunch a spark of delight. We shared a mischievous glance and bolted for the kitchen, our laughter echoing down the long hall. The house stretched nearly 200 feet, a narrow maze we knew by heart. The kitchen a distant glow we reached in seconds, bags crinkling in triumph. We didn't sense the shift, the house's gaze upon us. Back in the room, the air was wrong, stolen, cold. G lay still, exactly as we'd left him, but his giggles cut the silence, sharp and unnatural, like a voice from another world. The bed was undone, its covers folded with chilling precision at the foot, as if someone had stood there shaping our space. Who had touched our sanctuary? My heart raced, a cold dread blooming. Mom's eyes met mine, wide with unspoken fear. Her silence a weight we shared. We searched under the bed where dust hid forgotten toys, in the closet where shadows clung to empty shelves. Nothing, yet the air thrummed, alive with unseen eyes. We locked the door, the TV's light our frail shield, and sank into the movie. But the house's silence pressed closer, its walls whispering we were not alone. What had moved among us, and why did it linger? The question burned, a seed of fear that rooted deep, the house's pulse a quiet promise of more to come. Every house has a shadow, and ours was alive. Our home was a labyrinth, its body long and narrow, nearly 200 feet of corridors that swallowed light. It stood high above the street, yet loomed small beneath taller neighbors, their windows watching us like silent judges. The front, decked or open to a living room, a shared heart for meals and laughter, its far wall guarding 2 paths, an outside corridor past every window, bearing our lives to the night, and an inside hallway, a tunnel to our hidden selves. The inner hall was a gauntlet, my room, G's, the bathroom on the right, their doors scarred by years, and at the end, Mom's room, its door facing the kitchen's faint glow. That hallway was never still, its shadows breathing with intent. Each step felt like a challenge, the air thick with a presence I couldn't name, as if the house resented our footsteps. That night, after grabbing snacks, Mom and I raced back, the kitchen's warmth fading, the hall's silence swallowing our joy. G's laughter met us, bright but wrong, a sound that twisted the room's warmth. The folded covers were a message, etched in the house's tongue. They lay too perfect, their edges sharp, as if hands unseen had crafted them to mock us. We stood, bags heavy, our eyes searching for reason. Had we overlooked it, or had the house claimed us? We told ourselves it was our error, a fleeting oversight, but the lie rang hollow, the truth a cold blade in our minds. We searched, under the bed where shadows hid lost toys, in the closet where darkness clung to bare shelves. Nothing, yet the house was alive. The air pulsed, a storm of unseen gazes, the walls seeming to lean closer. We locked the door, the TV's hum a weak shield, and tried to lose ourselves in the movie. But the light couldn't touch the dark. The house was awake, and it knew we were here. Its silence was a weight, its walls a cage, as if it wanted us to feel its presence, to know we were never alone. What had shaped the bed, and what did it seek? The fear took root, a quiet vow that the house's story was only beginning. Its whisper a chain we couldn't break. Some sounds are the house's cry, and they demand your fear. 4 years later, I was 13, my body taller, but my heart braver. The house's shadow a constant weight. Dad was back, his presence a fortress, his laughter a spark against the gloom. That morning, sunlight flooded Mom's room, gilding the walls as we prepared for an amusement park adventure. Our voices bright with dreams of rides and sweets. Then, a pulse shook the air, a roar like the house was waking. It came from the outdoor kitchen, a violent tremor that mocked the sun's warmth, its rhythm alive, angry. We ran, Dad leading, his stride sure, his smile brushing aside my unease. The washing machine was a creature unbound, lurching across the concrete, its metal frame grinding with a force that felt like defiance. It moved as if it loathed us, as if it sought freedom. Dad's chuckle was light, teasing Mom about a misstep, but her eyes were wide, her silence heavy with dread. He turned the timer, his hands calm, and the machine stilled, the quiet sharp, almost taunting. We laughed, but the house wasn't done. We stepped away, the sun warm, but the machine surged back, leaping, its vibrations shaking the earth, defying every control, every effort to silence it. It was alive, and it challenged us. Dad's face tightened, his hands scrambling over buttons, his voice edged with strain. Nothing stopped it. The machine danced, its noise a rebellion against our world. Mom's fingers trembled as she pulled the cord, her breath sharp, and the machine fell silent, its hush heavier than its fury. We stood, waiting for it to defy us again. The house's breath was loud, its walls closer, its will clear. We were guests in its domain, and it would not yield. What power drove it, and why did it rise now? The fear lingered, a crack in the daylight, the house's whisper a vow that its anger was not spent. Some shadows borrow your loved ones' faces, and they run to haunt you. At 16, I was taller, sharper, but the house's weight had only grown, its corridors darker, its silence a blade against my heart. G was 9, his voice louder, his world brighter, yet the house's shadow touched us both. Mom's call came from the living room, urging us to the supermarket, a quick trip down the block. But G and I stayed, me lost in my computer's hum, him wrestling his PS2, his shouts a pulse in the open-door air. The house lived with our noise, a thin shield against its stillness, its walls watching with unseen eyes. Then, a sound sliced through, wrong, like a lock forced open. The gate rattled, the padlock scrape a jolt in the quiet, signaling Mom's return, her arms likely heavy with bags. I stood, ready to help, as G's game went silent, his footsteps darting past my door, quick and eager. But the air turned, cold, a truth I couldn't face. I moved to the front door, the wood rough under my hand, the house's silence a weight on my chest. Outside, Mom fumbled with the padlock, her face tight under the sun, and G stood beside her, his eyes puzzled, his hands empty. He'd been with her, never in the house. My blood turned to ice, my heart a frantic drum. Who had run past my door, stealing my brother's shape? The house stood still, its walls a silent witness, its shadows twisting in the light, laughing at my fear. What was it, and why did it wear his face? The question burned, a wound that bled into the day, the houses. Whisper a promise of secrets yet to unfold. Some fears are roots growing through time, binding you to the dark. At 26, I'd fled the house, building a new life in a distant land, its streets alive with unfamiliar light. But the house's shadow clung, a stain on my dreams, its corridors carved into my heart. After a weary day, I sank into bed. Cooking shows murmur a soft anchor. The TV's glow a fragile guard against the night. But sleep was a door, and it opened to the past. I woke, my body heavy, my chest a void of dread. The room bathed in the TV's cold light. This was her room, the bedroom from the house we'd left. My parents lay beside me, their breaths calm, unaware of the wrongness that choked the air. The house had pulled me back, and I was its captive. A woman stood by the door, her black hair a veil, her white gown a ghost in the dark. Her presence was a tide, her anger a flame that burned my soul. I couldn't move, my limbs bound, my mind a scream against the trap. Her gaze shifted to my parents, her rage a force that shook the room, and I felt her hatred, a power that could break the world. Fear consumed me, a sea I couldn't escape, but rage rose, fierce and raw, a fire in my core. This was my mind, and she had no place. I forced my voice out, cursing her, each word a defiance of her hold. My body stirred, slow, and I rose, each step a battle, my heart a roar. She was the house, its breath, its will. I charged, my vision blurred, and pushed her aside. Her touch a wave of endless loneliness, a void that drowned all hope. The corridor stretched, its walls alive, whispering my name, its shadows curling like fingers. I ran, the house's pulse hot on my neck. The door loomed, its wood a promise, and I threw it open, daylight flooding in, my room restored, the TV silent. But the house's whisper lingered, a scar on my soul. She was there in every shadow, her loneliness a mirror, a truth I couldn't flee. The house was alive, and it would never let me go. The night haunted me, its weight a constant, a reminder that some places claim you forever, their whisper a chain through time. When I was 9, the world felt safe until the morning a shadow came alive. My bedroom door stood open, framing a hallway that seemed to breathe, its darkness curling like smoke. Something moved in that stillness, not human, not animal, but a thing so wrong it broke reality. Its eyeless gaze found me, and in that moment I learned fear has a shape, flat, jagged, and hungry. Mornings in our house were a chaos of sound. My parents shouting over coffee, my sister's music blaring through. Thin walls, but that spring day the silence was a weight, pressing against my skin. I woke too early, the room bathed in a grayish glow, the kind that makes everything look like a faded photograph. Spring had just touched the air, warm but misty, the sunlight filtering through my bedside window in fragile streaks. My bed faced the open door beyond which the hallway stretched, a narrow passage to my parents' room across the way. They were gone, likely at work, and my sister was nowhere in the house. I was alone, a rare freedom that should have sparked adventure but instead coiled dread in my chest. I lay there, caught between sleep and waking, my eyes tracing the familiar outlines of my room, The dresser, scarred from years of rough play, stood against one wall, its surface cluttered with comic books and a broken model car. Posters of superheroes curled at the edges, their colors muted in the dim light. The window pane glistened with dew, each drop catching the dawn like a tiny, trembling star. Everything was as it should be, yet a prickle ran down my spine, a whisper of wrongness that made my breath shallow. "You're imagining things," I told myself, but the hallway beyond the door seemed to pulse, its shadows deeper than they had any right to be, pooling at the edges like liquid night. I blinked, willing the unease away, my fingers clutching the edge of my blanket. The house was too quiet. The usual hum of life replaced by a stillness that felt alive, watching. I considered closing the door, sealing myself in, but the thought of crossing the room, of turning my back on that hallway froze me. "Get up," I urged myself, but my body stayed heavy, rooted to the bed. The air thickened, carrying a faint hum like distant voices trapped in static. My eyes darted to the doorway, and that's when I saw it. A shape, darker than the shadowed hall, lurching into view. It wasn't human. The thing was about 5 feet tall, its form flat yet solid, as if carved from the absence of light. Its edges were jagged, like a silhouette torn from reality with a dull knife, sprouting stubby tendrils that writhed, each one twisting as if desperate to break free. My breath stopped, my mind scrambling to name it. A shadow, I thought, clinging to a child's logic, but shadows don't move on their own, don't walk. This thing did, its lurching steps deliberate, carrying it toward my parents' room. Its outline suggested a man, perhaps in an old-fashioned, wide-brimmed hat, but the tendrils, sharp, flickering, made it something else, something that didn't belong in this world or any other. Fear surged, cold and sharp, flooding my veins as I stared, unable to look away. The creature had no face, just holes where eyes and a mouth should be. Yet I felt it grinning, a mockery of joy that twisted my stomach into knots. The air grew heavier, sounds muffled, as if the world had retreated, leaving me alone with this horror. "It's not real," I told myself. But the lie crumbled when I realized no light cast this thing. It was its own entity, flat yet moving in 3 dimensions, a paradox that clawed at my sanity. The room dimmed, the gray light bending toward it, swallowed by its presence, and I swear the walls leaned in, as if drawn to its wrongness. My body betrayed me, heavy as stone, my limbs refusing to obey. "Run!" my mind screamed, but I was paralyzed, a prisoner in my own bed. The creature paused at my parents' door, its head tilting slowly, unnaturally, as if sensing my fear. "Don't look at me," I begged silently, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. Then it turned. Its head swiveled, the motion jerky, deliberate, and those empty holes locked onto me. The world tilted, the hallway stretching impossibly long, the creature's gaze a physical weight pressing on my chest. "It sees you," a voice whispered. Not mine, not human, slithering through my thoughts like oil. The tendrils quivered, reaching, and I swore they grew longer, their edges slicing through the air, inching toward my bed. Panic erupted, a primal need to survive. I threw the blanket over my head, a child's shield against the impossible, my breath hot and ragged in the dark. If I can't see it, it can't see me, I thought, clinging to a desperate hope. But the blanket felt thin, a flimsy barrier against something that didn't obey reality. I waited, trembling, my pulse a frantic drum in my ears, imagining the creature's faceless grin inches from mine, its tendrils brushing the fabric, ready to tear through. What does it want? The question looped, each repetition tightening the knot in my chest. Would it rip me apart, or worse, drag me into whatever void it came from, a place where light and reason didn't exist. Time stretched, seconds bleeding, into eternity. The silence was unbearable, broken only by my shallow breaths, each one a prayer for survival. Do something, I urged myself, the weight of inaction crushing me. I pictured my sister, safe in her room, or my parents, oblivious at work, and the thought of them grounded me, a tether to the world I knew. Slowly I lowered the blanket, my eyes darting to the doorway. Nothing. The hallway was empty, the gray light restored, birds chirping outside as if the world had never paused. Relief came, but it was fragile, tainted by doubt. Is it really gone? I climbed out of bed, my legs unsteady, my gaze flicking to every corner, expecting the creature to reappear, flat and grinning. From behind the dresser or under the bed, I crept to the doorway, my heart in my throat, and peered down the hall. My parents' room was empty, the bed neatly made, its normalcy a cruel contrast to the terror I'd felt. My sister's door was shut, a barrier I didn't trust. It could be anywhere, I thought, the idea rooting me to the spot, but standing still felt like inviting it back, so I forced myself to move, checking every room with the caution of prey. The living room was untouched, sunlight streaming through the windows, dust motes dancing in the air. The kitchen smelled, faintly of coffee, my parents' morning ritual lingering. The backyard was quiet, the grass damp with dew. Nothing. The house was ordinary again, but its normalcy felt like a lie, a mask over something waiting to lunge. I returned to my room, my hands shaking as I closed the door, sealing the hallway out. But the act felt futile. The creature's gaze burned into my memory, its eyeless holes more alive than any eyes I'd seen. What was it? The question gnawed at me, unanswered, as I sat on my bed, staring at the closed door. I thought of stories. My sister told of ghosts and demons, but none matched this thing, this flat horror that defied explanation. I wondered if it had come for me specifically, or if I'd just been in its path, a witness to something not meant to be seen. Days turned to weeks, and the creature didn't return, but its shadow lingered. I never left my door open again. The hallway now a place of dread, its corners too deep, too alive. At night I'd lie awake, listening for the lurch of its steps, the hum of its presence. Sleep became a battle, my dreams haunted by those tendrils, that grin, the sense of being watched. Once I woke in the dark, certain I'd seen it again, a flicker at the edge of my vision, but the room was empty, the door shut tight. It's still here, I thought, the idea sinking into my bones, a truth I couldn't shake. Years later, I'd think back to that morning, trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was a trick of the light, a half-dream born of a tired mind, but the memory was too sharp, too real, the fear too raw to dismiss. I never told my parents, afraid they'd laugh or worse, believe me and see the house differently. My sister, older and bolder, might have scoffed, but I saw her glance at the hallway sometimes, her eyes lingering too long. Did she feel it too, the weight of something watching? I never asked, and she never said. The house is gone now, left behind when we moved, but the creature's mark remains. I live in a new place, with new doors I keep closed, new shadows I check, twice. But sometimes in the quiet of early morning, when the light is gray and fragile, I feel it. A prickle down my spine, a hum in the air, the sense that something flat and hungry is waiting, just out of sight, ready to lurch into view. Winter 2017 turned my apartment into a prison, its walls whispering threats I couldn't see. Alone with my husband, a distant voice on the phone, I felt the city's pulse shift, its rhythm wrong, predatory. Then the teddy bears appeared, soft, tattered, their button eyes alive with a hunger that clawed at my sanity. They weren't toys, they were warnings, and something out there wanted me to know it was watching, waiting, forever. The city outside my first-floor apartment buzzed with life. Its neon lights and honking cars a false shield against the darkness creeping into my world. It was December 2017, the air sharp with the promise of Christmas, but the festive glow felt hollow, smothered by a melancholy that clung to me like damp fog. My husband was gone, working weeks at a time in a distant city, leaving me with only my aging dog, his slow steps and warm fur my sole comfort. I'd always prided myself on independence, thriving in solitude, but that winter, a shadow settled over me, a presence I couldn't name. "You're just tired," I told myself, but the unease grew, a seed of dread sprouting in my chest, its roots twisting deeper each night. It began in my dreams, or what I thought were dreams. Sleep paralysis had haunted me since my teens, episodes where my body locked and the room turned hostile. But this was different, sharper, more real. One night I woke, or didn't, my limbs heavy as stone, the room dim, lit only by the faint bleed of streetlights through my curtains. At the foot of my bed stood a girl, no older than 10, her white nightgown stained and tattered, her face a pale mask. Her eyes were hollow, black pits that seemed to swallow the light, and in her right hand she clutched a teddy bear, its fur matted with grime, one button eye hanging by a thread. She didn't move, didn't speak, just stared, her gaze a physical weight crushing my chest. "Wake up," I screamed inside, my mind clawing for freedom, but my body refused, trapped in a liminal space where reality frayed. The bear's eye dangled, swaying slightly, as if alive, and I swore it turned to meet my gaze, its stare colder than the girl's. When I finally broke free, gasping, the room was empty, the bedside lamp casting a weak glow. My dog slept at my feet, undisturbed, his breathing a steady rhythm. Just a dream, I told myself, but the image lingered. The girl's hollow eyes, the bear's dangling gaze, the sense that something had crossed into my world and left a mark. I kept the light on, staring at the ceiling, afraid to close my eyes, afraid she'd return. The next morning I shook it off, blaming stress, but the dream clung to me, a shadow I couldn't outrun, its edges sharpening with each passing day. Then came the cat. Every night I took my dog out, his slow, arthritic steps echoing in the quiet of the apartment complex. The grassy area behind our building, a shared backyard for residents, was always deserted, a no-pets policy ensuring solitude. But one night, as we shuffled through the cold, I saw it, a black cat, sleek and silent, crouched in the shadows. Its eyes glinted, too bright, too human, fixed on us with an intensity that prickled my skin. Just a stray, I thought, but its presence felt deliberate, wrong, like it wasn't a cat but something wearing its form. Each night it was there, closer, its gaze unyielding, following us through the dark. My dog sensed it too, his hackles rising, a low growl rumbling in his throat. It's watching us, I thought, an irrational fear blooming that if it caught up, it would take him, or me, or both. The cat became a ritual, a nightly specter I couldn't avoid. I'd scan the shadows before stepping out, my heart racing, but it was always there, waiting, its eyes a beacon in the dark. I started to dread those walks, the grass underfoot feeling less like earth and more like a trap, the air thick with the weight of being watched. Once I swore I saw it move without moving, its form flickering at the edge of my vision. But when I turned, it was gone, only to reappear moments later, closer, its gaze heavier. "You're losing it," I told myself. But the fear was real. A primal instinct screaming that this thing wasn't natural, wasn't safe. The teddy bears began to invade my waking life, their presence a cruel echo of the dream. My toddler niece, visiting with my sister, fixated on wanting a teddy bear for Christmas. Her insistence odd since she already owned a pile of them. Just a phase, I thought. But her words echoed in my mind, a refrain that felt scripted. Driving to work one morning, I swerved to avoid debris on the freeway, a pile of clothes scattered across the lanes, run over by countless cars. Among them was a teddy bear, its fur caked with mud, one eye missing, its body twisted as if in pain. I gripped the wheel, my breath shallow, the image searing into my brain. At a gas station, I found a sticker on the bathroom mirror. A grateful dead bear, its grin mocking, its eyes too alive. In stores, on TV, in random corners of my life, teddy bears appeared. Their button eyes always the same, always watching. It's just coincidence, I told myself. But the frequency was relentless, a pattern that felt like a message carved in my reality. Each sighting tightened the knot in my stomach, the line between chance and intent dissolving. I started to question my sanity, my days blurring into a haze of paranoia, my nights spent staring at the ceiling, waiting for the next sign. The city, once a comfort, became a labyrinth of threats, its lights too harsh, its shadows too deep. I checked my locks obsessively, kept my dog close, but the sense of being hunted grew, a predator circling just out of sight. One night, the doorbell rang sharp and jarring at 2:45 a.m. My heart leapt, fear flooding my veins like ice. No one knows I'm here, I thought, my introverted life leaving no room for midnight visitors. I lay still, hoping it was a dream, but the silence that followed was worse, heavy with anticipation, as if the world held its breath. I crept to the front door, my bare feet cold on the hardwood, my pulse a frantic drum. Peering through the peephole, I saw nothing, just the empty porch, the street beyond quiet under streetlights. I checked the front window, my breath fogging the glass, but the darkness revealed no one. "You're imagining it," I told myself. But as I turned back to bed, the bell rang again, sharper, more insistent, slicing through the silence. I froze, my hands trembling, every nerve screaming to stay still, to hide. Who's out there? My mind raced to the girl, the cat, the bears, each image a puzzle piece in a picture I didn't want to see. I checked the peephole again, then the window. But the porch remained empty, the gate locked tight. I returned to bed, my dog curled at my feet, his warmth a fragile anchor. Sleep wouldn't come, the air thick with the sense of being watched. The apartment no longer mine, but a stage for something else. Then, a faint rustle from the back, where glass doors led to the grassy area. I'd hung sheer white curtains to block the night, but they felt useless now, a veil against a threat that didn't need to see me to know I was there. I sat up, my eyes locked on the curtains, and saw it, a shadow, tall and indistinct, gliding across the glass. Just a neighbor, I thought, but the no pets rule meant no one walked there, especially not at this hour. The shadow passed again, slower, its edges sharpening as if taking form. My breath caught, my hands gripping the blanket, knuckles white, as the shadow stopped, centered on the door. The handle moved, a slow, deliberate twist that stopped my heart. Someone's trying to get in, I thought, my mind spiraling to the worst. Intruders, the girl, something not human. My dog stirred, a low whine breaking the silence, and the handle stilled, the shadow vanishing as if it had never been. I stumbled, To the doors, pulling the curtains aside, my eyes scanning the dark grass. Nothing. The night was still, too still. The silence a lie hiding something waiting. I checked on my dog, his breathing steady, and added a deadbolt to the glass doors, but the act felt futile. A gesture against a force that laughed at locks. I didn't sleep, my mind replaying the shadow, the bell, the sense that my home was no longer safe, that something had claimed it, marked it, made it theirs. Days passed, the unease a constant companion. My life a tightrope walked between fear and denial. Then, just after 3 a.m., the doorbell rang again, its chime a knife in the dark. I woke, my heart pounding, and listened, every nerve on edge. Silence followed, but I couldn't stay still, couldn't ignore it. I crept to the front door, my hands shaking, and, against all reason, opened it. "What are you doing?" my mind screamed, but a force, curiosity, dread, or something else, drove me. On the porch, against the wall, sat a teddy bear, tan and massive, its head reaching my waist. Its fur was worn, stained with dirt and dark red patches. A tattered red bow tied loosely around its neck. Its button eyes stared straight ahead, unblinking, radiating a malice that stole my breath as if it saw through me, into me, knowing every fear I'd ever buried. This isn't a gift, I thought, scanning the empty street, the locked gate untouched. I slammed the door, my mind spiraling. Who left this? I called my husband, his voice groggy but certain. He had nothing to do with it. No friend, no neighbor knew me well enough for this, prank or not. I considered the police, but what could I say? A teddy bear was threatening me? The absurdity didn't lessen the terror. The sense that this thing wasn't just an object but a vessel, a message from something that knew my name. I left it there, unable to touch it, and went to work. The image of those eyes burning in my mind, following me through the city's crowded streets. My co-workers laughed when I told them, their voices light, dismissive. Kids playing a prank, they said, but their words rang hollow, a denial of the truth I felt in my bones. I nodded, forcing a smile, but the bear's gaze haunted me, its presence a weight I carried all day. By evening, I'd steeled myself, the daylight lending false courage. Wearing rubber gloves, I carried the bear to the dumpster, its weight heavy in my arms, its eyes seeming to shift, to watch, even as I turned away. I threw it in, the lid closing with a thud, and walked away, telling myself it was over, that I'd reclaimed my space. But the unease lingered, a shadow that grew with each passing night, each glance at the glass doors, each moment alone. I thought the bear was the end, a bizarre climax to weeks of dread. But the city had one more twist to deliver. On December 23rd, after a long day at work, I stopped at the grocery store, juggling paper towels and last-minute Christmas gifts. My hands full, I fumbled with my car's hatchback, cursing my stubborn refusal to ask for help. A man approached, his work clothes stained, hair unkempt, his blue eyes piercing too deeply, like they saw past my skin to the fear beneath. "Let me help," he said, his voice smooth but wrong, a note off-key that set my nerves alight. I declined, my voice sharp, but he stepped closer, ignoring my refusal, his presence a violation of the space I'd fought to keep safe. Before I could stop him, he opened the hatchback, standing too close, his eyes locked on mine, unblinking, like the bear's. I thanked him, tossing my bags in, my hands trembling as I moved to the driver's door. "Merry Christmas," I said, forcing the words, desperate to escape. He didn't move, his smile cold, predatory as he held out his hand. In it was a tiny teddy bear, dressed in a Santa hat, its button eyes glinting with the same malice as the one on my porch. "For you," he said. his voice low, knowing as if he'd been part of this all along. My blood ran cold, my mind screaming questions. Was he the one? Has he been watching me? The parking lot wasn't empty, but it felt like a void. Just me and this man, this bear, this moment. I stammered, "No thanks. I don't have kids." The words weak, a shield that wouldn't hold. His smile didn't falter, but his eyes darkened. A flash of anger as I slid into my car, my hands shaking on the wheel. I pulled away, watching him in the rearview mirror, standing there, his gaze boring into me, the bear still in his hand, its eyes alive, accusing. I drove home, paranoia a living thing in my chest, checking my locks twice, my dog pressed close, his warmth a reminder of the world I was losing. For weeks I saw teddy bears everywhere, in shop windows, on TV, in my dreams. Their eyes always the same, always watching. I moved eventually, leaving that apartment, that city, the memories of those nights behind. But the fear stayed, a shadow I can't outrun, a truth I can't unlearn. Teddy bears, once symbols of comfort, are now harbingers, proof that something out there knows me, wants me, and is waiting for me to look back, to acknowledge its gaze, to let it in. My name is Max, and though I live in the city's heart now, my past is tethered to an old house on a street where shadows lingered too long. It wasn't a poor man's place, despite its peeling paint and sagging porch, built before World War. It stood defiant, its insides warm with polished wood and soft lamplight. But warmth can hide darkness, and that house held more than memories. Mom and I lived there alone, her laughter filling the rooms, but the walls seemed to hum with stories of those who died within them. I always believed in ghosts, not because I wanted to, but because they wouldn't let me forget. One night years ago, we sat in the living room, the TV off, the air thick with late-hour quiet. Outside, the world was a void, black as ink swallowing the street. Mom was knitting, her needles clicking softly, while I sprawled on the rug sketching. Then it came, a stumble, heavy and deliberate from the kitchen. My pencil froze. Dishes clattered, shattering, the sound sharp enough to cut. Mom's needles stopped, her eyes meeting mine, wide and searching. "Stay here," she whispered, but I followed, my heart pounding. The kitchen was pristine. No broken plates, no sign of chaos. The air felt wrong, heavy, like someone had just left. We stood there, silent, the house watching us. Mom forced a smile, blaming the wind, but her hands trembled. I knew it wasn't the wind. That night I lay awake, the darkness pressing against my eyes, wondering what had moved through our home. Was it still here, listening? Years passed, but the house never let go. I started dreaming, vivid, relentless dreams that pulled me down. A winding path, Mom at my side. The air was cold, the sky bruised purple, and a voice, low and male, cut through the silence. "Bridge," it said, clear as a bell. Then 3 sharp taps on my back like fingers pressing through my skin. I woke gasping, my room dark, the house still. Nothing was there, but the taps lingered, a phantom weight. I brushed it off, blaming too many late nights, but the dream returned, night after night. The voice changed, its words slipping away. But one night, it spoke of Mom's death, cold and certain. Each time those 3 taps jolted me awake, my pulse racing. Was it a dream or something more? I started dreading sleep, the house's silence mocking me, its walls seeming to lean, closer in the dark. One evening, Mom and I sat in that same living room, the air heavy with memory. I told her about the dreams, the voice, the taps. Her face paled, her knitting falling to her lap. She hesitated, then spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Once, years ago, she'd snapped at a friend, her words coming out in a deep, male voice she didn't recognize. "Shut up," she'd said, and the room had gone cold. She didn't remember saying it, but her friend swore it wasn't her. That voice, it was the same as in my dreams. My blood ran cold. Was something in the house speaking through her, through me? In 2017, cancer took her, swift and merciless, in the very room where we'd heard those dishes fall, where I'd confessed my nightmares. The house felt emptier, but heavier, like it was waiting. I moved out soon after, fleeing to the city, but the dreams followed, fainter now, yet always ending with those 3 taps. I still believe in ghosts, not because I choose to, but because they've carved their truth into me. A white car slowed beside us, its window rolling down, and his smile wasn't right. It was a sunny Saturday, the kind where the air smells of cut grass and freedom. I'd invited Sophia over, and we were sprawled in my room, the fan humming, our laughter bouncing off posters of bands we swore we'd see live. The house was alive with the clink of dishes from Mom in the kitchen, the faint buzz of a lawnmower outside. By noon, our stomachs growled, and we decided to hit the shops for snacks, the park nearby calling us with its promise of shade and chatter. We were just kids, carefree, the world a bright, open place. But some shadows wait for the light to find. We left the house, the sun warm on our skin, the street lined with familiar bungalows and blooming hedges. Sophia's sneakers scuffed the pavement, her voice a melody of gossip and plans. The shops were a short walk, their neon signs flickering even in daylight, the air thick with the scent of fried food and gasoline. We grabbed chips and soda, the plastic bags crinkling, and headed to the park, a patch of green tucked beside the strip mall. We sat on a bench, the wood worn smooth, joking about school, the breeze tugging at our hair. You think you're safe in the open. As we stood to leave, crossing the road, a white car appeared, its engine a low growl, slowing to match our pace. You can't stop looking back when you feel eyes on you. The window slid down and a man leaned out, his face shadowed by the car's roof. He was older, maybe late 30s, his skin weathered, his grin sharp and wrong. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice oily, the words dripping with something foul. I froze, Sophia's arm brushing mine. "Come here. I want to talk to you," he said, licking his fingers, his eyes locked on me. My stomach churned, anger flaring over fear. "No," I snapped, scanning the back seat. Empty, thank God. His hand moved, a gesture so vile it burned into my brain, and Sophia whispered, "Let's go, you creep." We turned, our steps quick, aiming for a side path by the shops, the bag of chips heavy in my hand. But he followed, the car's hum a predator's purr. The white car reappeared, parking close, his voice louder now. "Why won't you speak to me? Come on, please." That smile again, evil, hungry. I shouted, "Leave us alone, you weirdo." My voice cracking, fear swallowing my bravado. Sophia grabbed my hand and we ran, diving into a shop, its fluorescent lights harsh, the smell of cleaning fluid sharp. We crouched behind a shelf, my heart pounding, Sophia's breath ragged. I called Jaheim, my fingers fumbling, telling him everything. "Call the cops," he urged, but I hesitated, hoping it was over. You tell yourself it's nothing, but your body knows better. We waited. The shops hum a thin shield, then slipped out, taking the quickest path home. The street too quiet, the sun too bright. Sophia glanced back and screamed, "He's following us." The white car was there, cruising slow, a shark in shallow water. My legs shook, but we ran, Jaheim's voice crackling through the phone. "Go to Spider Park," he said, and I shouted, "Sophia, hide." The park was small, hemmed by houses, no place for cars. She ducked behind a wall. I slid into a cluster of bushes, the leaves scratching my arms, the earth cool against my knees. The car circled, his shadow passing, searching. You hold your breath when the hunter's close. He drove off, the engine fading, and we bolted through a gate to my house, slamming the door, our gasps filling the hall. I told my family, their faces pale, and called the police. They listened, but their words were hollow. We'll use it as intel, but we can't do anything now. Disappointment stung, but Sophia's voice cut deeper. What if it's the same guy? She said, her eyes wide. You don't forget a moment like that. A week earlier, I'd woken at 3 a.m., the house silent, a faint tap on my window. I'd peered through the curtain, my heart in my throat, and saw an arm, shadowed, knocking slow, deliberate. I'd rubbed my eyes, praying it was a dream, but it stayed, real and wrong. What if he'd been watching all along? I'd felt it before, months back, a chill on my walk home, like eyes in the dark. But I'd brushed it off. Now, it clicked. Some fears don't leave. The white car, the arm, his smile, they haunt me, a shadow I can't outrun. The morning was a traitor, cloaking the house in a chill that wasn't just winter's bite. I was 7, blinking awake in my shared bedroom, the familiar creak of our old house replaced by an unnatural silence. My sister's bed was empty, her blankets tangled as if she'd fled in the night. The air was heavy, sharp with frost, and something was watching me, its gaze a needle in my spine. I pulled the covers tighter, my breath fogging in the dim light, and scanned the room. The walls felt closer, the shadows too deep, as if the house had swallowed its own heart. Pattern interruption. Then I saw them. 2 heads floating above my sister's bed. One was an old woman, her long black hair writhing like snakes, her green eyes glowing with a hunger that pinned me to the mattress. Beside her, an old man, bald and gaunt, his blue eyes cold as ice, stared without blinking. My scream tore through the silence, but my legs wouldn't move, frozen by the weight of their gaze. Sensory overload. The room pulsed with the stench of damp earth, the air crackling like static, and the floorboards groaned as if something heavy prowled beneath. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying, but their faces burned behind my lids, etched in cruel detail. Embedded command. Feel the terror of being seen the moment the impossible becomes real. I stumbled from bed, my bare feet slapping the icy floor, and ran to the doorway. There he was, a man, tall and shadowed, standing just outside. His face was a blur, but his presence was a fist around my heart. I screamed again, collapsing into my mother's arms as she rushed in. She looked where I pointed, her eyes widening, and spoke softly to the empty doorway, her words lost to my panic. Was he real? Was any of this? She held me, whispering comfort, but her trembling hands betrayed her fear. Trance loop. The house stayed quiet after that, but the memory looped. In my mind, a nightmare I couldn't shake. Was it a dream? A trick of the light? The heads, the man? They felt too real, too alive. Nested storytelling. My sister once told me about a neighbor who saw faces in her attic, whispering her name at night. She moved away, but the house stayed, empty, its windows dark. Now, in our own home, I wondered if we'd invited something similar, something that knew us. Anchoring. I clung to my mother's warmth, her heartbeat my only tether to safety, grounding me against the dread that lingered. Years passed, but the fear followed. At 13, I came home exhausted from a friend's house, the night heavy with rain. I collapsed into bed, the room dark, the door ajar. At 4:09 a.m., a jolt woke me, my skin prickling as if the air had eyes. There she was, my mother or something, wearing her face, standing in the doorway. Her eyes were red, glowing like embers, lifeless yet piercing. Pattern interruption. My heart stopped. It wasn't her. I hid under the blanket, praying, my breath loud in the suffocating dark. It stood motionless, its gaze a weight crushing my chest. I peeked again, and it faded, growing fainter until the doorway was empty. Sensory overload. The room reeked of wet wood. The rain's patter a mocking rhythm, and the air pressed against my skin like invisible hands. I told my mother everything, my voice shaking. Her face paled, and she admitted she'd seen them too. The heads, the man. She described the old woman and man, their features matching my memory, and whispered they looked like my grandparents, long dead. Trance loop. My mind spun. Were they family or something else wearing their faces? The man at the door, the red-eyed shadow. Were they connected? Even now I feel their eyes in the dark, waiting for me to look back, to acknowledge they're still here. The laughter in my cousin's apartment was warm, a shield against the cool evening air, until I saw her. I'm Jasmine, and that night, sprawled on the couch with my cousin, we were lost in stories, the city humming softly outside. It was 7 p.m., the living room bathed in the glow of a single lamp, when my eyes drifted to the window. Across the narrow alley, another apartment stared back, its curtains wide open, a rare sight in this city of closed blinds. A figure stood, there motionless, her hair a dark veil over her face. My breath caught, a chill creeping up my spine. I nudged my cousin, my voice low. Look at that window. He froze, his smile fading, and scrambled for his binoculars, a relic from his military days. I thought it was just a neighbor, maybe lost in thought, but the stillness felt wrong, like the air before a storm. He handed me the binoculars, his hands trembling. I looked, and my heart stopped. The woman wasn't standing, she was hanging, her body limp, swaying gently from a small chandelier. Blood dripped from a gash in her neck, staining her yellow dress, pooling on the floor below. Her hair hung like a shroud, hiding her face, but I didn't need to see it to know she was gone. My cousin's gasp echoed my own, the room spinning as I lowered the binoculars. This can't be real, I thought, but the image burned into my mind, sharp and undeniable. The city outside felt distant, the warmth of the apartment replaced by a cold that seeped into my bones. We sat frozen, the binoculars heavy in my hands, the woman's silhouette still visible through the naked window, a silent scream in the night. We snapped out of it, adrenaline kicking in. We had to do something. My cousin, trained for crises, grabbed his phone and called the building security guard. I ran to the window, showing the guard the horror across the alley. His face paled, his radio crackling as he alerted his partner. We followed him to the other building, my legs shaking with every step, the alley's shadows clawing at me. The guard struggled with the apartment's lock, the door creaking open to reveal chaos. Furniture overturned, papers scattered, a sour stench of decay hitting us like a wave. My stomach churned, but I couldn't look away. We pushed into the bedroom, and there she was, just as we'd seen, hanging, lifeless, the chandelier groaning under her weight. The blood had spread, a dark mirror on the floor, reflecting the flickering light. My cousin gripped my arm, his military calm cracking, and I felt the world tilt, the horror too vast to hold. The police arrived, their lights flashing through the alley, voices sharp as they secured the scene. We told them everything, our words, stumbling over the terror still gripping us. 2 weeks later, they caught the killer, a man whose name I never learned, his motives locked behind a cold stare. The police gave us a reward, a small gesture against the nightmare we'd lived. But I see her every night, hanging in that window, her blood dripping in my dreams. Months later, in my own apartment, I caught a glimpse of a shadow across the street, a figure too still, too wrong. I closed my curtains and never looked again. Was it her, trapped in that moment? Or just my mind, haunted by what I saw? I don't know, and I'm too afraid to find out. I was in 6th grade, a skinny kid with a backpack heavier than my courage, walking home on a rainy afternoon. The mile-long path cut through a cemetery, not the creepy kind from Ghost Stories, but a tidy one, alive with dog walkers and maintenance workers in baby blue uniforms. That day the rain drummed on my hood, blurring the gravestones into smudges of gray. You ever feel the world's too quiet, like it's holding a secret? I passed a group of workers on a bench, their laughter muffled by the downpour. One stood, his gray beard dripping, his name tag glinting, Frank P. I thought nothing of it, just another face in the crowd. He started walking behind me, his boots splashing at a steady pace. I glanced back and he looked down, quick, like he'd been caught. Keep walking, he's just going somewhere. But the other workers faded into the mist, and Frank P. stayed, a shadow tethered to my steps. My stomach twisted, a faint alarm I couldn't name. "It's wet, huh?" he called, his voice warm, almost fatherly. I forced a laugh, nodding, but my skin prickled. The cemetery's paths narrowed, the gravestones looming closer, their inscriptions blurred by rain. He was still there, closer now, his silhouette sharp against the fog. You know that moment when curiosity sours into dread? The rain turned to a torrent, soaking my sneakers, my house just a block away. I jogged, the keys jingling in my backpack. But his steps quickened too. I stole a glance. His face was wrong, twisted, angry, eyes burning through the downpour. My heart lurched, and I sprinted, mud splashing my legs, my breath ragged. Run. Get inside. Don't look back. I fumbled the key into the lock, tumbling through the door, slamming it shut. I peeked out the window, my chest heaving. There he was, in the street, staring, unmoving. I grabbed the phone, fingers trembling over 911, but when I looked again, the street was empty, rain washing away any trace. Was he ever there? I told my mom when she got home, but her frown said she thought I was imagining things. Just the rain playing tricks, she said. I wanted to believe her, but sleep wouldn't come that night. The storm raged outside, lightning carving jagged scars across the sky. I lay in bed watching shadows dance through my living room window, each flash a pulse of fear. Then I saw it, a shape, too tall, too still. I crept to the living room, the floor cold under my bare feet, my breath caught in my throat. A car's headlight swept past, and there, pressed against the glass, was Frank P. His face pale as bone, eyes hollow, a skeletal grin stretching too wide, too wrong. Lock the door, hide, scream. I ran to my room, bolting the door, my heart a drum against my ribs. He was gone by morning, vanished like a nightmare. Let me tell you what I heard years later, from a kid who knew the cemetery's secrets. They said, a groundskeeper named Frank had worked there decades ago, but something broke in him. Whispers of bodies missing, graves disturbed. Some swore he still walked the paths, his blue uniform a ghost in the rain. You think he was just a man, don't you? I never saw him again, but that face, those empty eyes, that unnatural grin, lives in me. Every baby blue uniform, every rain-soaked night brings it back. What if he's still out there waiting for me to walk home again? I was in 9th grade, a lanky kid with too much homework and not enough sleep, when the world I thought I understood started to unravel. My best friend lived in a towering apartment block, the kind with flickering lights and hallways that smelled of damp concrete. I'd visit him often, our nights filled with video games and exam prep, the city humming below. But that night at 9 p.m., the building felt different. Too quiet, too still. Finals week had kept me late, well past my usual 5 p.m. exit, and as I waved goodbye on the 15th floor, a chill settled in my bones. The air was heavy, like the building was holding its breath. I headed for the freight elevator, its creaking, doors promising a quicker descent than the sluggish passenger one. That was my first mistake. The elevator was a relic, its walls scarred with graffiti, the air stale without a working fan. The light buzzed, flickering like a dying pulse, casting jagged shadows. 3 others stood with me. A tired woman clutching grocery bag, a man in a hoodie staring at his phone, and someone hidden in the corner. Their face lost in the dark. No one spoke. We were strangers bound by the descent. The car lurched downward, each floor ticking by with a groan, until it stopped abruptly at the 9th. The doors slid open, and my heart skipped. There was Billy, a girl from school I barely knew, standing in the hallway. Her white t-shirt glowed under the fluorescent light, her laughter sharp as she chased a group of kids. She turned, her eyes locking onto mine, and smiled. A wide, knowing smile that felt too personal. I froze, unsure why it unsettled me. I didn't wave back. Words stuck in my throat. The doors closed, the elevator hummed, and we reached the lobby. But as I stepped out, a realization hit. None of the others had reacted to Billy's laughter, loud as it was. Had they not seen her? I shook it off, the night air cold against my skin as I walked home. But her smile lingered, sharp and wrong. The next day, I saw Billy at school, her usual quiet self. Curiosity gnawed at me, so I asked, "Why were you playing so late on the 9th floor?" Her face twisted, confused, like I'd spoken another language. "What? I was home all night," she said, her voice steady. My stomach dropped. "But you were wearing a white t-shirt, right?" I pressed, desperate for confirmation. She shook her head. "No." The world tilted, the hallway too bright, too loud. If it wasn't Billy, who had I seen? Her smile replayed in my mind. Not friendly, but predatory, like it knew something I didn't. I tried to forget, but the building called me back. A few days later, I was at my friend's again, the clock pushing past 9 p.m. The elevator loomed, its doors a silent threat. I couldn't face it, not after Billy. The stairwell seemed safer, but I was wrong. The stairwell was a concrete tomb, its lights dim, the air thick with dust. Each step echoed, my sneakers scraping against the worn steps. I kept my eyes down, but something pulled my gaze to an open balcony across from the landing. A shadow stood there, human-shaped, leaning out as if watching the street below. Just a neighbor, I told myself. But when I glanced again, it was gone, vanished in a heartbeat. My breath caught, my legs trembling. No one could move that fast. Not without a sound. I checked the sign, 8th floor. That meant I'd seen the figure on the 9th, the same floor as Billy's ghost. Panic surged, my steps quickening, the stairwell closing in. I called my friend, my voice shaking, and spilled everything. He went quiet, then said, "People say the 9th floor's haunted. A guy died there, left rotting for 3 days." The words sank like stones. I never took the stairs or elevator again, but some nights I see that shadow in my dreams, its edges blurring, and I hear Billy's laughter. Too loud, too close. What else waits on that floor watching? A sharp knock shattered the silence, pulling me from sleep in a cabin by the lake. It was a few years back, after I'd won a major case against a drug dealer, a victory that felt like a shield. My family deserved a break, so I rented a cabin, nestled in the pines, its wooden walls glowing under lantern light, the air rich with cedar and earth. The kids laughed by the fireplace, their voices mingling with the crackle of logs, while my wife hummed, setting out board games. Outside shimmered under a half moon, the forest a dark curtain beyond. We were safe, cocooned in warmth, far from the city's noise. But the night has a way of finding you. I'd fallen asleep on the couch, the quilt heavy, when my wife's hand shook me awake, her fingers cold. "Someone's at the door," she whispered, her eyes wide, the cabin's warmth suddenly thin. You don't expect danger in a place like this. The knocking came again, sharp, insistent, echoing through the wooden walls. I rubbed my eyes, my mind sluggish. Who'd be out here miles from anywhere in the dead of night? "Stay here," I told her, brushing off her offer of the baseball bat by the hearth. "You think you're in control until you're not." I crossed the room, the floorboards cool under my feet, the air sharp with the scent of pine and frost. The knocking grew louder, a rhythm that didn't feel right, too deliberate. I opened the door, the night rushing in, cold and vast. A boy stood there, maybe 10, his face pale under the porch light, his jacket torn. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice rough. He didn't answer, just turned and ran, his sneakers crunching on gravel. You don't stop running when instinct kicks in. I chased him, the forest a blur of shadows, my wife's silhouette in the doorway behind me. The boy darted in circles, his breath puffing in the moonlight, until he tripped, sprawling in the dirt. I grabbed his arm, my heart pounding. "Why are you knocking at our door?" I demanded. He looked up, his eyes hollow, and said, "'Cause my uncles told me to." I frowned. "Why?" His voice dropped, a chill in every word. "To get you out of the house." My wife's scream tore through the night, her voice raw with terror. I spun, my blood freezing, and saw them. 4 men, their faces masked by darkness, charging from the trees, their footsteps a thunder in the earth. You run faster when death is close. I sprinted, my lungs burning, the boy forgotten, his words. A loop in my mind. To get you out, to get you out. My wife was on the porch, the bat raised, her face fierce, but I shouted, "Get inside!" She retreated, slamming the door, and I barreled after her, the men's breath hot behind me, maybe 15 feet, maybe less. I made it inside, locking the door, my hands shaking as I grabbed my phone and called the cops, the operator's voice a distant lifeline. The cabin felt like a trap, its walls too thin, the windows too wide. My wife clutched the bat, the kids, huddled upstairs, their whimpers cutting through me. What if they got in? The police arrived, their flashlights slicing the dark, but the men were gone, melted into the forest. They found our car ransacked, papers and IDs scattered, my name on legal documents they'd taken. They knew who I was. Months before, after the case, I'd gotten a letter, unsigned, scrawled in jagged ink. "You'll pay." I'd dismissed. The coward's threat. Now I know better. The boy was gone too, a ghost or a pawn, his face burned into me. Who were they and what did they want? The question haunts me, a shadow I can't shake. They could have stormed the cabin, taken my wife, my kids. Was it revenge tied to the dealer I'd put away? You don't forget a night like that. We never returned to that cabin, the lakes. Beauty tainted, the forest a threat. Some doors you close, but the fear stays open. The trampoline bounced softly under us, our laughter echoing into the night, but something in the dark was listening. I was 15, sprawled across the springy surface in my boyfriend's backyard, the air warm with the scent of cut grass in summer. It was 10:30 p.m. The world quiet except for the hum of crickets and the faint glow of his yard's lights. The trampoline sat high, overlooking a small park just beyond a low fence, its swings and trees barely visible under the moon's pale gaze. We talked, our voices light, but a chill crept up my spine, a feeling I couldn't shake. Someone's watching us, I thought, my eyes darting to the shadows, catching nothing but the sway of branches. I laughed it off, blaming the dark for my nerves, but the unease clung, heavy as fog. My boyfriend shifted, his laughter fading as he knelt up, his gaze fixed on the park. "There's something out there," he whispered, his voice tight. My heart skipped, but I teased him, thinking he was messing with me. He didn't smile, just pointed to a massive eucalyptus tree, its silhouette stark against the night. "Look," he said, his words sharp. I followed his finger, squinting into the dark, and saw it. A shape taller than any man standing half hidden by the tree. Its eyes glinted, not like an animal's, but brighter, colder, like twin stars burning through the shadows. My breath caught, my body frozen. "It's just a guy," I stammered, but the shape was wrong. Too tall, too still, its arm draped over the tree like it wasn't human. My boyfriend's voice dropped lower. "It's moving." The thing stepped forward, its long limbs cutting through the dark, those eyes never blinking, locked on us. My pulse roared, drowning out the night. "Get to the house," my boyfriend hissed, pulling me up. I couldn't move, my legs leaden, fear chaining me to the trampoline. The thing was closer now, almost at the fence, its form sharper under the yard's faint light. Black as pitch, its head tilted, those eyes searing into me. My boyfriend swore, dragging me off the trampoline, my feet stumbling as we ran for the porch. "It's coming," my mind screamed, the air thick with the smell of earth and something older, wilder. I glanced back just once and saw it, clawing at the fence, its limbs bending wrong, too fast, too close. We burst through the door, slamming it shut, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would break. Inside, his family gathered, their faces pale as we spilled our story. His father, a devout man, called it a demon, a test of faith, his voice trembling with conviction. I didn't believe him, but I couldn't explain those eyes, that shape. A month later, during a late-night FaceTime, my boyfriend saw it again. A shadow perched in the rafters of my old barn-like house, watching me. I never went back to that room. Now at 19, I still feel it sometimes, a prickle on my neck when I pass a park at night. Last week, walking home, I saw a shadow by a tree, too tall, too still, its eyes glinting in the dark. Was it real or just my fear, etched into me forever? I don't know, but I keep running, and I always will. The lake was a mirror, reflecting a piece that felt like a lie. A few years ago, after winning a high-stakes case against a drug dealer, I took my family to a cabin nestled by a secluded lake, its wooden walls promising refuge from the world's chaos. The kids laughed as they unpacked, their voices echoing off the pine trees while my wife hummed softly, arranging blankets in the cozy rooms. Night fell, and the cabin glowed warmly, but the darkness outside was too thick, pressing against the windows like a living thing watching us. Pattern interruption. A sharp jolt woke me, my wife's hand gripping my shoulder, her eyes wide with fear. "Someone's at the door," she whispered, her voice trembling. The clock read 2 a.m., the silence of the night shattered by a steady, deliberate knock. Sensory overload. The air was heavy with the scent of damp wood, the floorboards cold against my bare feet, and the lake's faint ripples lapped outside. a mocking rhythm to the pounding at the door. I grabbed my jacket, ignoring my wife's plea to take the bat, and approached the entrance, heart thudding. Who would be out here miles from nowhere? I opened the door, and a boy stood there, no older than 10, his face pale under the porch. Light. His eyes were hollow, darting nervously, and his clothes were too big, hanging off his thin frame. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice sharper than intended. He turned and ran, his small figure swallowed by the night. Instinct kicked in. I chased him, the gravel biting my soles, the cold air searing my lungs. Embedded command. Feel the pull of the unknown. The moment you run toward danger. The boy darted in circles, his footsteps erratic, and I caught him. As he tripped, pinning his arm. "Why are you here?" I demanded. Trance loop. His answer froze me. "My uncles told me to knock, to get you out." My mind reeled, trapped in a loop of dread and disbelief. Uncles out here? I glanced back at the cabin, and my wife's scream pierced the night. Footsteps thundered behind me. 4 men, masked and hulking, charged from the shadows. Pattern. Interruption. My world tilted. This was a trap. I released the boy, sprinting back, my heart a drumbeat of panic. The men were close, their breaths ragged, their boots pounding the earth like a war drum. Nested storytelling. I remembered a colleague's warning after the trial, about a dealer's crew who vowed revenge. Their threats whispered in court, enough. Laughed it off, but now, with these men closing in, his words were a noose around my neck. Was this them? Had they found us? My wife stood on the porch, bat raised, her face a mask of terror. "Get inside!" I roared, shoving her through the door, anchoring. I gripped my phone, its weight a lifeline, as I dialed the police, my voice shaking but steady, anchoring me against the chaos. Sensory overload. The cabin's walls seemed to pulse, the air thick with the tang of pine and fear, and the men's shouts echoed outside, too close. We barricaded the door, my kids sobbing in the corner, their wide eyes burning into me. The police arrived, their sirens a fragile hope, but the men were gone, melted into the forest. They'd ransacked our car, stealing papers, my ID, our address. Trance loop. I keep replaying that night. The boys' hollow eyes, the men's masked faces. Were they after me, my family, the case? The lake knows, but it's silent. We never return to that cabin, but the fear follows, a shadow waiting for another knock in the dark. I was 14, brimming with the restless energy of youth when my family moved into a rented house for my dad's 2-month work stint. The place was a dream, polished floors, wide windows, a promise of new memories. We spent the first day unpacking, laughter echoing as we arranged furniture and claimed rooms. Mine was small but cozy, a bed tucked against one wall, a mirror glinting in the corner, my computer humming on a desk, and a closet with a heavy wooden door that creaked faintly when touched. You ever feel a room has a pulse, like it's sizing you up? Exhausted from the move, I collapsed into bed, flicked off the light, and let the darkness swallow me. Sleep came fast, but it didn't last. A sound, low, deliberate, like a finger tapping bone, jerked me awake. It came from the closet, its door slightly ajar, a sliver of black deeper than the room's shadows. My heart thudded, but I didn't move, my eyes cracking open just enough to peer into the dark. There it was, an eye, wide and unblinking, staring from the gap, its gaze a needle piercing my soul. Every hair on my body stood, and a scream tore from my throat as I bolted from bed, stumbling through the hall to the living room where my parents sat, their faces soft under the lamplight. Words spilled out, frantic, about the eye, the closet, the terror. My dad, ever practical, stormed to my room, flung open the closet door, Nothing, just clothes, swaying slightly, mocking my fear. He called it a nightmare, his voice gentle but firm, and tucked me back into bed, my mom leaving the door ajar to let a sliver of light spill in. I lay there, pulse slowing, but sleep was a stranger. Was it my imagination? Dad checked. There was nothing. Doubt gnawed at me, but the closet's shadow loomed. A silent challenge. I grabbed my phone, propped it on the desk, and hit record, aiming its lens at the now closed closet door. Let it be my third eye, watching what I can't. Somehow I drifted off, the phone's red light a faint comfort. Morning came, gray and quiet, and I woke feeling foolish but alive. The phone was still recording, its battery nearly dead. After a shower and breakfast, I joined my parents in the living room. Dad glued to the TV, Mom flipping through a magazine. Boredom nudged me to check the video, expecting nothing but a dark screen. I plugged in my headphones, fast-forwarded through hours of silence, then froze. A knock, sharp and real, echoed in my ears. I slowed the video, my breath hitching. Another. Doc? Then the closet door creaked open, inch by inch. A hand, pale, bony, gripped the edge, pushing it wide. Out stepped a figure, draped in a nun's habit, her face hidden by a veil. My palms sweated, the room spinning as she glided toward my bed, her movements unnaturally smooth like a puppet on invisible strings. She stopped, looming over where I'd slept, and lifted her veil. Her face was beautiful, porcelain skin, eyes warm as candlelight, a smile soft and kind. My chest loosened, drawn to her warmth. Then her lips parted, revealing perfect white teeth, and her smile stretched, wider, too wide, a grotesque mask of malice. Her skin paled to a sickly snow white, her eyes darkening into pits of hunger. Run, scream, hide. I nearly dropped the phone, my pulse roaring as her grin grew, promising something unspeakable. Then footsteps, faint but real, from the hall. The nun's head snapped toward the door, her veil falling as she glided back to the closet, the door shutting soundlessly behind her. Someone checked on me that night. That's what saved me. I showed my parents the video, their faces draining, of color, eyes locked on the screen. We packed and left that day, fleeing to a motel, the house a memory we couldn't bear. I showed the owner the footage, but he laughed, calling it a prank, his disbelief a cold dismissal. Let me tell you what I learned later, from a neighbor who knew the house's past. They said a nun had lived there decades ago, her faith twisted by despair, her spirit trapped in rituals that stained the walls. You think a house forgets its ghosts, don't you? It's been a year, but sleep is a battle. Every creak, every shadow brings her back. That smile, those eyes, the closets. Silent threat, what if she followed us? My name is Kai, and at 17, I thought I knew what fear was. That night, I learned I was wrong. It started innocently enough, a group of us, me, Spencer, Braden, John, Ethan, Liam, and my little brother Cameron, crammed into my living room, the air thick with the smell of popcorn and laughter. We'd just finished a comedy flick, the kind that leaves your sides aching, but the clock read 11:30 p.m., and outside the world was swallowed by darkness. My house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, its backyard path leading to a street that faced a vast empty field. Once a playground, it was now a tangle of bushes and a small cornfield, perfect for games that thrived in the shadows. Spencer, always the instigator, grinned and said, "Let's play Spotlight." The idea sparked something reckless in us, and we grabbed flashlights, unaware of what waited in the dark. The field was a black sea, the cornstalks whispering as we crossed the street. Spotlight was simple: hide in the dark, while the seeker hunted with a flashlight. We played rock, paper, scissors, and Braden, 14 and cocky, drew the short straw as seeker. Spencer, my age and built like a linebacker, nudged me toward the cornfield. "Hardest place to find," he whispered. John and Ethan, both 16, slipped into the bushes, while Liam, 14, and Cameron, also 14, scattered to other corners. The air was cold, the sky starless, and the field felt alive, its shadows shifting. Spencer and I crouched among the corn, the stalks scratching our arms, their dry leaves crunching underfoot. We were invisible, or so we thought. We traded whispers. About the movie, stifling laughs, the game, a distant thrill. Then a rustle, too heavy, too close. I pressed a finger to my lips, my pulse quickening. "It's just Braden," Spencer mouthed, but his eyes betrayed doubt. The sound multiplied, footsteps stomping, deliberate. My heart sank. "Braden's alone, right?" I whispered. Spencer's face paled. We weren't alone. The rustling grew louder, joined by voices, low, guttural, not our friends. My blood turned to ice. They were close, their words fragmented but chilling. "Boys, snatch, easy." Time froze, the cornfield a trap closing around us. Spencer gripped my arm, his breath shallow, his usual bravado gone. Were they after us? The voices faded, their steps retreating, and we exhaled, thinking they'd left. Then a scream tore through the night. Cameron's voice, raw with terror. "Get away! Help!" My heart lurched and we exploded from the corn, running toward the sound. The others emerged, their flashlights slicing the dark. John, Ethan, Liam, all converging on Cameron's cry. He was in the open, a shadow looming over him. Two men, tall and cloaked in darkness, stood there, one wielding a glinting blade. They weren't playing games. Spencer and John charged, their size a weapon. John grabbed one, slamming him to the ground while Spencer faced the armed man. The man lunged, and Spencer, eyes wild, pulled his pocket knife, striking 3 times. Blood sprayed the man, staggering. I reached Cameron, his face white, and yanked him up. "Run!" I shouted, my voice breaking. The group scattered, adrenaline driving us. Spencer shoved his opponent down, but John kept pummeling, lost in rage. "John, stop!" Spencer yelled, pulling him back. We sprinted to Spencer's house, the closest refuge, our breaths ragged. His mom's face blanched as we spilled the story, her hands shaking as she dialed the police. The field felt like a dream, its edges blurred, but the fear was too real. Officers arrived, their radios crackling, and we led them back. The field was empty, the men gone, but a dark stain marked the path where Spencer's knife had struck. The police collected it, their faces grim, but found no trace of the attackers. Back home, Cameron's voice trembled as he told me the knife-wielding man had grabbed him, the other unarmed. Guilt gnawed at me. Had we gone too far? But Spencer's knife had saved us. Without it, John might have been cut down. No one was hurt, but the night left scars. We never heard from the police again, the men vanishing like ghosts. Some nights, I see that field, hear Cameron scream, and wonder if they're still out there, waiting in the dark. Eyes burned in the dark, watching me, and the door I'd locked was open. I was 12 when we moved into that house, a sprawling old place with creaking floors and windows that rattled in the wind. It was beautiful, Mom said, with its high ceilings and carved banisters, but to me it felt wrong, heavy, like it held secrets in its walls. My room was across from my parents' bedroom, a space I dreaded, its door always seeming to loom, casting shadows that didn't match the light. Night after night, I'd dream of stepping into that room, only to find a tall black shadow staring, its form human but faceless, a void that swallowed hope. You don't know fear until it finds you in your sleep. The house smelled of old wood and dust, the kind that settles in your lungs. My brother's room was down the hall, his posters of superheroes a bright contrast to the house's gloom. I'd shut my door every night, the click of the latch a small comfort, knowing I could see their room from my bed if it opened. You think, a closed door keeps you safe. But the dreams kept coming. The shadow's gaze a weight, its silence louder than any sound. I'd wake sweating, my heart racing, checking the door. Always closed. Always locked. Mom laughed off my fears, saying it was just a new house, but I saw her glance at their room sometimes, her smile tight. One night, the air changed and fear became real. I woke from a sleep so deep it felt like drowning, my body heavy, the room too still. Someone was watching. At first the darkness was empty, the only sound my shallow breaths. But as my eyes adjusted, I saw it. My door, always locked, stood ajar, a sliver of hallway visible. You can't look away when dread takes hold. And there, in the doorway, was the shadow from my dreams, tall and black, its edges bleeding into the night. No face, no features, just a presence staring, its gaze a cold hand on my spine. I froze, my pulse a drumbeat, unable to blink, unable to scream. You're nothing when it sees you. Time stretched to hours or seconds, I couldn't tell. The shadow didn't move, didn't speak, but its stare was a promise, a threat I couldn't name. Then, slowly it turned, gliding toward my brother's room, its form dissolving into the hall. You don't breathe until it's gone. I don't know when I slept again, only that I woke to sunlight, the door closed, the house quiet. I told myself it was a nightmare, buried it deep, but the fear lingered, a splinter under my skin. You can't unsee what's real. Months before, I'd heard footsteps in the attic, faint but deliberate, and Dad had found nothing but cobwebs. I'd ignored it then, but now I wondered. We moved to another state 2 years later, the house kept for holiday visits, a relic we couldn't let go. I'd almost forgotten the shadow, chalked it up to a child's imagination, until my uncle came to stay. He'd fought with his wife, needed space, and asked to use the house. My parents agreed, and we visited him that winter, the air crisp, the house unchanged, its smell of dust sharper now. You don't expect the past to speak. Over coffee, my uncle asked, casual but careful. Ever dream of shadows in your room? My parents chuckled, oblivious, but my blood ran cold. You know when someone's seen it too. That night I told him, everything. The dreams, the open door, the shadow's stare, its walk to my brother's room. His face hardened, and he admitted he'd seen it too. A black figure watching my room, its presence like a weight on his chest. You don't forget a thing like that. He told my parents and they stopped laughing. We never went back. A priest came, performed a cleansing, the house's air thick with incense, but it didn't matter. They put it up for sale, but it sits, empty, unsold, as if it clings to something no one can name. The shadow never touched us, but it marked us. I'm older now, but I still feel its eyes. The door creaking open in my mind, the panic of being seen. Some fears live forever. The new house was a promise, but its walls whispered warnings I couldn't ignore. I was 12 when we moved in, the paint still fresh, the floors gleaming under sunlight that felt too bright, too eager to hide what lurked beneath. My parents were thrilled, their laughter filling the airy rooms, but I couldn't shake the dread that clung to me, especially in their bedroom. That room was wrong. Its corners too sharp, its silence too heavy, as if it waited for me to step inside. I kept my door closed at night, a flimsy shield against the unease that seeped through the house. Sensory overload. The air carried a faint metallic tang, like old coins, and the floorboards creaked with a rhythm that wasn't ours. The windows rattled softly, even without wind, and the shadows stretched longer than they should, pooling in places light couldn't reach. My nightmares began the first week, always the same. I'd walk into my parents' room, the air thick, and a tall shadow loomed, faceless but watching, its presence a weight on my chest. I'd wake gasping, the dream's afterimage burned into my eyes, but I told myself it was just the stress of moving, nothing more. Pattern interruption. One night, I woke without reason, my skin prickling as if the air had eyes. The door was open. I always closed it, locked it even, but now it gaped, a black maw leading to the hall. My heart thudded, each beat a plea to stay still, but I couldn't look away. There it was, a shadow, tall and formless, standing at the threshold. No face, no eyes, yet I felt its gaze, cold and unyielding, stripping me bare. Embedded command. Feel the dread of being seen. The moment the dark knows your name. I froze, my breath shallow, trapped in a body that wouldn't move. Trance loop. The shadow didn't stir, but time stretched, seconds bleeding into hours. Was it real? A dream spilling into the world? My mind looped, caught between fear and denial, each thought a tether pulling me deeper into panic. Needed storytelling. I remembered a story my cousin told about an old house where doors opened on their own, where a guest saw a figure watching her sleep. She left the next day, but the house stayed in her dreams. Now, staring at this shadow, I wondered if our house was the same, if it had chosen me. Anchoring. I gripped my blanket, its rough weave my only anchor, grounding me against the terror threatening to swallow me whole. Sensory overload. The room grew colder, the air thick, with a damp, earthy scent, and the shadow's edges seemed to pulse, bleeding into the walls. Then it moved, gliding without sound, its form stretching toward my brother's room across the hall. My scream died in my throat and I squeezed my eyes shut, praying for morning. When I opened them, the door was closed, the shadow gone, but the house felt heavier, as if it had tasted my fear and wanted more. Pattern interruption. I told myself it was a nightmare, but the open door lingered in my mind, a crack in reality I couldn't seal. We lived there for years, each night a silent battle against that room's pull. We moved eventually, the house, relegated to a holiday retreat, but the fear stayed with me, a shadow in my thoughts. Then my uncle came to stay, fleeing a fight with his wife. One night over dinner he asked, "Did you ever see a shadow in that house watching you?" My parents laughed, oblivious, but my blood ran cold. He'd seen it too, standing at my door, staring. Trance loop. My mind spun. Was it real? Had it followed us? He described it. The same formless mass, the same crushing gaze. And I felt the house's presence again, miles away. Anchoring. I held my fork tightly, its cold metal a lifeline, as my uncle's words confirmed my terror. My parents arranged a cleansing ritual, priests chanting over the empty rooms, but the house refused to sell, its windows dark, its doors still waiting. Sensory overload. I can still smell that metallic air, hear the creaks, feel the shadow's gaze. It never hurt us, but its weight lingers, a reminder that some doors, once opened, never truly close.